So in this session today, we are going to be talking about the topic of finding a work-life balance. Now, I'm going to start this. I don't normally begin with the final answer and then work backwards as to how you achieve this, but I just thought a slightly different spin on this particular session might be helpful to give you the context in which I'm going to be presenting lots of tips and ideas and kind of secrets, I guess, for finding a work-life balance. Now, a few years back when I started to really investigate quite deeply and do a lot of research for my own purposes, my own benefit in finding a work-life balance, what I focused on was to remove a specific word from my vocabulary. And this has been one of the most profound changes that I've seen in establishing a work-life balance for myself. So I'm going to give this one to you to play with. And if it resonates with you, if you find this quite useful, or if you find your own version, maybe there's a different word that you'd like to be using, then please, by all means, do so. I'm just sharing with you one that I've found particularly pertinent and particularly useful. So the word that I'm going to be removing from, well, maybe even your vocabulary is the word busy. Okay, removing the word busy. The most profound moments I've had in establishing a work-life balance, which I'm pretty comfortable with mine, and I'm going to share some of the things that I do. I'm sure you have other things as well, but we're going to focus on some of the more researched areas for finding this. But the most profound thing that I did, a single act, a single focus and habit that I've built, and as I say, we'll reverse engineer back from this answer to show how we can basically start playing with some of these concepts. But it was to remove the word busy from my vocabulary. Now, of course, the word busy inspires the whole and evokes the whole kind of idea of just running around in a sort of headless way, just, chasing after stuff, being at everybody else's beck and call, finding high levels of anxiety and stress in pretty much everything that you do. Being busy, you could argue, is quite, for some people, quite empowering, but for most of us, it's a counterintuitive state. It's not a state that we would want to necessarily be in. Being controlled, being balanced, being very mindful over every moment is probably a more successful route to finding a work-life balance. So I'm going to just continually use this word busy as a little reminder as to maybe an approach that you could take if you're looking to become a little more self-aware about your own work-life balance. So what I'm not going to do as we go through this is actually tell you to do exactly what I've done. I'm going to introduce to you some of the thinking, some of the quotes behind people who are pretty consistently living, I guess you could call it living the dream, but is finding this kind of optimum balance. And this is a key word here. The importance of balance cannot be underestimated when you're looking to find this work-life mix that will really suit you. But as I say, not everybody feels exactly the same. So this is very personal to you. There's a quote, a very well often used quote, which is, "You will never feel truly satisfied by work until you are satisfied by life." So in other words, even though you feel really driven in your career, you feel very ambitious, you feel passionate about what you do, finding and establishing balance between life beyond work or beyond projects or beyond clients or customers is also important to do. Now, 67% of professionals believe work-life balance affects their productivity and well-being. So that's 2/3 of people in work right now would be saying, yeah, it's kind of quite important. Now, you could say, well, what about the other third? Well, either they are busy, should we say that, or maybe not feeling as fulfilled as they might be. So this is important. And the key thing, and something that we're seeing as a very significant trend, is that over the last couple of years, burnout rates have been increasing significantly. They are up, so it is claimed, by 5%, literally over the last 24 months. Now, there could be a whole host of reasons for this, and we're not going to necessarily go deeply into those. But what we are going to recognize and take accountability for is ourselves. The work-life balance that you are able to achieve in a way, in such a way, in such a balance that works for you. Might be different to mine, might be different to the next person, but the work-life balance that works for you is your accountability and responsibility. Okay, so it's not your boss, it's not your senior manager, it's not your partner, it's not your friend, it's you. Okay, so you have choices here. Now, you can choose to not take those choices and pass them off to somebody else. But ultimately, the accountability for a work-life balance lies within you. And that's a really important thing. So when I talk about being busy, if busy isn't necessarily the state that you want to be in, and you want to be in a more balanced state, then the ownership is with you. I'm giving you the permission to take this on. So no matter how domineering, controlling others might be in your life and affecting your everyday decisions, ultimately, accountability, responsibility, and choices are yours. Okay. And if you choose to take that on, then we can start to introduce the word wellness. Okay, now wellness comes in many different forms, and depending on who you ask, their perspective, the context, or their particular focus, they will give you a slightly different definition. But I'm just going to say wellness is a balance between caring for your mind as much as caring for your body. Okay, so there is a quote, caring for the mind is as important and crucial as caring for the body. We're not quite sure who actually first said that, but wellness is holistic. Okay, not in the sense of spirituality, but in the sense of it is all-encompassing. It is every facet of you. So it is your mind, it is your heart, it is your body, and it is your soul. So it's the whole thing. And when we find that 20% of professionals feel mentally exhausted from being overworked, for a lot of people, this is out of sync, it's out of balance, it's out of kilter, and we need to address this. So what we're going to define here is that, busyness is not necessarily a good thing. Being full, being inspired, being motivated, being empowered, feeling energetic, feeling impassioned by these things is great. But taking it beyond to overworking, to an imbalance between your work and your life will be detrimental to you. So where can you begin with this stuff? Well, here's some things to start thinking about. If you're not necessarily feeling well in its broadest sense, the way that we're defining it here, often people will say, well, it's meditation that you need. You need to be taking those little moments, those little times out where you can find yourself in a little haven or little oasis, little quiet place and space that just gives you that time to come down, just to relax, just to be in the moment, just to be really present, not worrying about what's just happened, not taking any attention to what's going to happen potentially, not telling yourself stories, but just relaxing into the moment. This is one of the most profound ways that you can take care of yourself, both mentally and spiritually and emotionally, is to just pause in the moment and not necessarily think that, okay, I've got to find some meditation space to have 15 minutes meditation a day. A lot of practitioners say that that's very, very good for you. I would more concur that actually it's about regular breaks. So little bite-sized moments throughout your day, both at work and in your everyday life, where you can just take those little moments to pause. And if pausing for you means just sitting quietly with your eyes closed, then great. If pausing for you means I'm going to take the dog out for a walk and I'm just going to leave my phone at home, then great. It's very, very personal. But taking a regular break out and away from others, because others can be quite a distraction and can not necessarily be supporting your balance and your wellness. Taking a break away from the tech, we'll talk about technology in a moment, but just taking those regular breaks, those moments for you. Maybe also having what we might term mental health days. So to become mentally healthy, to refuel yourself, to re-energize and reinvigorate yourself, take yourself away for a day. It doesn't have to be a full day, but whatever you can manage, taking yourself away and potentially then combining that with a digital detox. I love that phrase, digital detox, because for most of us, irrespective of our role, we are surrounded by digital. We're surrounded by tech. So thinking of when I'm meditating, thinking of when I'm taking my breaks, thinking if I can take some time to fuel my mental health, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to leave the technology behind. It isn't necessarily serving me in those moments. I'll come back to it, of course, because it's an enabler for what I and probably for what you and others do. But just in that moment, just pausing. Wellness is about you. It's not necessarily about firing up that app, putting those headphones on, and still consuming in a digital way. It's about pausing and taking a really genuine break from the everyday and from work. And of course, this has a spin-over knock-on effect when you're looking for balance into your physical health. And the groundwork, according to Lee Hunt, of all happiness is health. And physical health comes really at the heart of this. 60% of marketers, it is claimed, work beyond their standard hours. And of course, for many of us, that isn't necessarily contributing to physical health. It's probably contributing to physical fatigue and tiredness. And of course, on a prolonged basis, this can lead to what we might term the word dis-ease or disease. You break the word disease down and it's actually dis-ease, which is not the balance that we're seeking. So to remain in good physical health and good emotional health and feel well within ourselves as we try and strike this balance, we need to attend to physical health. And as we all know, this is not rocket science here, a lot of research behind it, but it's not complicated. Taking regular exercise. So much as I've said, taking regular breaks, even the odd 5 minutes here and there can have a profound effect on your work-life balance, on your physical and mental well-being and emotional well-being that spins out from that. So regular exercise, and that might not be a full yoga workout. It might not be doing a half marathon. It could just be for a little walk around the garden or a stretch, a little walk around the block, or maybe even just doing some stretches at your desk, but probably stand up and do those too. And find yourself surrounded in what we might term an ergonomic workspace, particularly checking your posture as you work through the day. I do find personally on some sort of long sort of Zoom or Teams calls, I find my posture actually deteriorating as I go through the call. So I start off all nice and upright and quite alert and ready. And I find then I sink down into the chair as the meeting goes on. And I look at myself in the screen and think, well, they can't really see how I'm sitting, but oh my goodness, look at me. And so a lot of self-reflection when you're in your workspace is also really important. So the regular breaks, the regular exercise, making sure the workspace suits and serves you. But if you can't change the desk or change the position or change your seat, making sure that you're checking your posture and stretching routines are really important. Obviously, having a yoga practice could be the ultimate in that terms, but literally just rolling shoulders, stretching your arms. Maybe you have a power ball that you can sort of use in your hand to give you a little bit more kind of tension actually in your arms as you rotate your wrists, for example. Just doing little and often stretching routines will have a profound effect on your work-life balance. It will physically re-energize you. The more oxygen you can get passing through your system, particularly when you're sat statically, and most of us do sit statically for big chunks of the day. If that is the case, the more oxygen you can get flowing in these very simple ways, the better for you. And again, this is all contributing to your work-life balance. So we're not, as you've already probably gathered by now, we're not looking at, a complete revolution of your lifestyle here. We're looking at an evolution. I love the term incremental gains, little 1% improvements, but add all those little 1%s up and they can contribute to something really quite amazing for you. So we've looked at wellness. We've talked a little bit about kind of things that you can do in your kind of everyday work to just start to feel more physically alive and awake and aware. And of course, one of the things that you'll need to do as you start to address your work-life balance is think about how you're fueling yourself, your nutrition. So nutrition comes from food and from hydration. Now, again, there's a lot of research here, so you can kind of figure out for yourself what is the right kind of balance. But you are what you eat. Okay, so we know that it's an often found quote that's used pretty much everywhere. You are what you eat. And of course, that is true. You may well be interested, if you want to do some deeper dives into the subject of nutrition and seeing how that will contribute to your work-life balance. You might want to track down the book, Eat Right for Your Type, because if I was to give you some nutrition advice now, it would almost certainly be incorrect. What we need to understand is how we as a person, as an individual, as a human being, will respond to the food that we eat. And there's been a lot of scientific research done on eating the right kinds of food types in the right levels of balance for your blood type. So Eat Right for Your Type is a book that goes deeply into, if you know what your blood type is, the kinds of foods that are going to serve you well. I'm A positive, my blood type, so I'm very much served by a plant-based, very green-centric vegetables and fruits diet. So that is what I practice. But you could be completely different. You could be completely at the other end of the spectrum. So finding out what works for you, don't just take this generic nutrition advice. You need to find something that works for you. And of course, if you are what you eat, getting that balance is very, very important. As is making nutrition, making food, and making your hydration practice something that you protect and almost kind of feel that is worth devoting and dedicated quality time to. Research shows that 73% of professionals eat lunch at their desks. And as you're probably going to gather very, very quickly here, I would challenge that as being fundamentally wrong for reasons of physicality. It's a good opportunity to get up and move around. It's also great to get away from the tech. It's a good idea to, if you can, go outside. The concept of biophilia, which is actually emerging and immersing yourself into nature, and particularly whilst you're eating, can have a profound effect on how you then perform, if we're talking lunchtime, for the rest of the day. So don't eat lunch at your desk. Do not carry on working. Avoid that work. I am too busy to break for lunch. Remember, we're not using the word busy. That's now banned if you choose to do so. But also take and actually really honor the time for getting some nutrition and some real fuel inside you. So plan your meals. Healthy snacking is also good. Avoid the binge eating at lunchtime. Okay, I'm going to put my hands up here. You can't see my hands, but I'm putting them up in the air here and admitting that, yeah, sometimes I like a big lunch. I am a bit of a foodie, so I enjoy it. So I'm not perfect at this. But if you can do healthy snacking, smaller as you work through the day, smaller amounts of food, a little and often, is generally perceived as the best way to fuel a work-life balance and the best way to keep your sugar levels and your hydration just about right. So little and often through the day, rather than sort of falling foul of that, post-lunch lag. We call it the graveyard slot if you're at a conference or at a presentation and somebody's got the slot to present to you straight after lunch, because everybody is coming down from that. Well, you see it in the out in the on the vast plains in Africa where all the lions have gone hunting and feeding, and straight after their feeding, they all flake out in the sun and just lie there as their body is, sort of working on the food that they've just eaten. Well, we are animals too. So don't expect yourself to be any different. So if you want to maintain a nice, healthy balance through the working day, then healthy snacking, little and often, is the key to it rather than big meals. But again, eating right for your type will add an extra layer of complexity, but of real kind of congruence there on top of that. Now, hydration is obviously a very, very key one. If you're anything like me and a bit of a coffee junkie, I do love a nice coffee, then you do need to really be, and the same applies to tea, because both of those will dehydrate you. So the fact that you have 20 coffees in the day is not hydration, by the way. You probably know this, but if you didn't, it isn't. So you do need to be using water, best quality water as well. So if you can get sort of purified water or water that has been through some kind of filter rather than straight from the tap, probably is going to serve you better. But again, little and often, sipping throughout the day is a very, very great way of fueling your day. And if you're thinking of carrying this through everyday life, not just at work, then particularly avoiding eating late at night. I and my wife do have a little bit of a habit sometimes for having a little bit of a treat. Sort of later in the evening, we might have a little dessert, and often we find we don't sleep as well. And certainly if you look at your sleep statistics, if you have a Fitbit or Apple Watch or an Oura Ring, you'll see that there is a significant effect coming through in your quality of sleep if you eat late at night. So try and avoid that as well. But it's the same kind of thing. What you're doing at lunchtime if you binge eat, or if you're doing at night if you eat late, is you're giving your body too much to do all at once. So finding a good work-life balance with that physicality, with that good mental state, and with a selection of well-crafted points throughout the day that you fuel yourself through food and nutrition is the best way to strike a balance. And this again is not complicated stuff. It is stuff that you can try and test and play with, but do have a look at that right for your type book, because that will give you a lot of tips as to kind of where to begin in terms of the right kinds of foods. So we've kind of sort of looked at ourselves in almost isolation here for finding the work-life balance. But as I started off right at the beginning when I said, it's not about, being beholden to everyone else. But of course, we work as social beings, we work in collaboration, we work in a community, we work in a business or in a team. So what we need to make sure is that we're finding a work-life balance also then impacts positively on and for others as much as it does for ourselves. So one of the things that, again, there's increasing amounts of research into, which contributes to a work-life balance that's going to work for you, is kindness and empathy. So whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. So the kindness, the empathy that you can show for other people's situations when they come at you at your desk and they say, look, you've got to do this, you've got to help me because I'm up against this deadline, is just for a minute, don't fold your arms and say, well, I'm not helping you, it's not my problem, is actually really trying to appreciate with a really kind heart what other people are going through. Not necessarily take on their baggage, but finding a work-life balance really comes from, looking within, but also then conveying externally kindness. So research tells us that kindness can increase your job satisfaction, irrespective of what you do, by up to 1/3. So just doing your job, doing your tasks, working as part of a team with kindness and love and empathy at the core of the way that you do it, the style with which you do your tasks and with which you collaborate with others, can increase your job satisfaction, you personally, by 1/3. Now, that doesn't sound like too hard a thing to do, does it? It's just about focus. It's about being present, being mindful, and not necessarily just saying no because you've always said no, but not also saying yes because, well, Neil said in that webinar, I've got to just be kind, so I've got to say yes to everything. That's not what we're saying here. What we're talking about here is active listening, taking on the things or helping with the things that you are going to add value for, but actually maybe giving people tips of how they might self-serve or how maybe others could help them and provide value too. So really actively listening to the core of the problem, and then maybe using something like the STAR technique to actually give them a way forward. So looking at the situation, thinking about the task, maybe working with them to get an action plan, and then reviewing with them later the response or the result. So STAR: situation, task, action, and result. And that can often help to keep things very process focused, so you don't get all the little nuances of, well, he said or she said, or, well, I can't do that because, or, well, they don't seem to like me in that team, or all those kind of, office gossip things that we often all find ourselves falling into now and again. We can lose that as we're showing kindness and empathy and really helping people from a practical sense. So offering help where we can, but guiding where we can't. And practicing gratitude, just being really grateful for the fact that we're in this really blessed and privileged position as we're starting to craft this world within us, but also around us, that's going to have this lovely sort of knock-on benefit to others as well. Because, and I can speak from experience here, as you start to do these things and as people start to notice that, you're looking really relaxed. And how do you manage to cope with all those, those tasks? Because you seem to be spinning all these plates, but not getting stressed. How do you do it? Then people become curious as to the tools and the techniques that you're using. And particularly if you're in some kind of leadership role, leading by example by doing these things, rather than just telling people to do stuff, actually showing them and demonstrating how it's done is another form of kindness and empathy. But within that comes the concept of boundaries. The people who are really exhibiting a strong and balanced, consistent work-life balance are people who are very good at setting boundaries. Brené Brown talks about daring to set boundaries. It is about having the courage to love ourselves even when we risk disappointing others. And for me, this is about when it's time to say the right kind of no, because it's not going to serve us or it's going to be detrimental to us. And saying the right kind of no, which could be no, not now, rather than no, not never. So when you say no, think, well, what kind of no am I trying to say? So if I need to set this boundary up because it's too much, or it's, look, my calendar is full, and what, you're going to give me that extra task to do? So rather than suffering under the stress of it, actually having those conversations and setting those boundaries, even when we risk disappointing others, because we know in our heart of hearts, logically, practically, and emotionally, for our well-being, our new balanced work-life scenario, it's the right thing to do. So having the confidence to do that may take time. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do, but when nearly half of employees regularly receive after-hours emails, for example, again, a lot of research on this, that's not a great scenario to be faced with, where you feel this kind of tech pressure from the rest of the organization. Well, if I'm getting these things, that must mean other people are working. So I can't be seen to not be working as hard as everyone else. Therefore, well, I'm just going to let my boundaries go now, and I'm just going to jump in and do this. And do you notice what I used there? The word just. What we must avoid doing is using the word just. It isn't, can you just do this task, or can you just complete this? The request is actually, can you do this task, or can you complete this? Just is used as an excuse to get you to break down your boundaries that you've set. So try where you can to resist, but resist in the right way, resist in a positive way, and be very clear in your communication. If it is, my calendar is full, I don't have the capacity. Remember, we're not using the word I'm too busy, but we're saying I don't have the capacity to take that on now. But if we could negotiate the timings, I could do it next Monday by close of play. How does that seem? And then setting those kinds of boundaries, both in terms of how you'll communicate, how you're going to deliver this stuff, as much as actually getting the feedback from the other person when they say, oh, well, actually, I said it was really urgent. Well, actually, no, don't worry about it. You can do it by Tuesday. That's fine. You can often then reset those boundaries and those kind of negotiated terms of engagement with the other person. And what a lovely work-life balance that gives you. So you're not stressing over the weekend to get this thing done, working late on a Friday night when you perceive everybody else has gone home, or they're down the pub enjoying themselves and you're still working. How's that going to feel? That's not going to be good. You've renegotiated the boundaries. So as long as you're clear and open and positive and super, super clear with your boundaries, people will respect it. And what you're doing is you're kind of sort of coaching yourself, but you're also self-coaching them as well, because you're helping them to understand, oh, okay, so if I need something urgently, I need to kind of brief you a little bit earlier because you've got a lot of stuff on. Remember, I didn't use the word busy there. So you've got a lot of stuff on. So I've got to just, have that conversation with you earlier next time. And the answer is, well, yes, please, if you can, that would be great. And so then you're setting these priorities, you're negotiating the timescales and setting the boundaries in collaboration with others. So what I'm not saying is work-life balance comes from you working in an ivory tower, setting boundaries that work for you, but hey, to heck with everybody else. You're doing this in collaboration. And that is a nice feeling when you get the feedback that says, wow, gosh, Neil, you're really actually in control of this, aren't you? I can see you've got a lot of stuff to do, but yeah, if you could slot me in there, because that is more high priority for you than this bit. But, we've negotiated that. We're both comfortable with those as terms. Yeah, I'm feeling good about that conversation. You're going to feel good and they're going to feel good too. So we're talking about lots of little details here, but these are some of the most profound things that you can do quickly to make a difference. Experiment with right now. You don't have to wait on these things. They're not that complicated, but actually finding your own style and way of doing them is key. And of course, if you can establish the balance through doing these things, then you are going to find yourself getting yourself a little bit of prioritized downtime. Yes, those little moments through the day, but also those little moments where, you give yourself permission to kind of not check your social accounts. You're not going to sort of look at your email inbox, and you're actually going to close it just for a minute because I'm going to have a little bit of downtime. I am going to go for that walk at lunchtime rather than, oh no, I've got so much on, I need to get back to it. I've bolted down the food, but I did get away from the desk like Neil recommended, but now I've got to get back to it. This is actually taking quality downtime. So resting when you're weary, refresh and renew yourself, your body, your mind, and your spirit, then go back to work, says Ralph Marston. Continuous work reduces productivity rates by 50% after 3 hours. So those kind of people who say, I'm just going to power through, or those people who, do you remember the phrase, or have you heard the phrase, burning the candle at both ends? It genuinely doesn't work. I know from experience a few times in my whole career, I've kind of literally worked through the night to get a job done. But wow, it's like having jet lag the next day. You don't know if you're still in yesterday or you've just started today because the sun's just come up. It's hard. Was I productive for the next 2 or 3 days after that? Probably not. So even though sometimes you feel obliged and called to do, really go above and beyond, I'm not saying don't ever do it, but just know there's a consequence, and that after 3 hours, your productivity rate of continuous working has dropped by a half. So what are you going to do then to fill the downtime, to put some quality moments in this downtime, to get the best of it? Well, quality downtime, the value of downtime is refreshing yourself. Now, if you're introverted, that probably means your refreshing and your re-energizing is solo. It's alone. If you're extrovert, it's probably being with others. So no one size fits all. I am strongly introverted, so I would not be looking to refresh in my downtime if I needed to re-energize with anybody, bar possibly my partner, but everybody else they'll see me when I kind of get back to work. But my downtime is going to be completely solo. So hobbies, quality time, traveling, maybe sort of doing something a little bit different, go for a bike ride or something, or maybe even just sitting quietly alone reading. For others, it is about the energizing that they get. If they're extrovert, the energizing they're getting from doing maybe a team sport, or maybe just doing something in collaboration, or maybe go and do some volunteering with a community group. Whatever the value of downtime is to you, it is very, very personal. But to strike a work-life balance, it is vital that you schedule this in. Don't wait for the gaps. Plan this in. So spontaneous planfulness, or planned spontaneity, as I tend to call it, is something that is really important if your calendar is currently full. So you have to block time out for this stuff. Otherwise, you will never, ever find the time, because particularly if you enjoy what you do, project or work-wise, you're not going to make specific time for this. But as you've seen already, it is vitally important. So don't devalue it. The value of downtime, where you come back stronger, you come back refreshed and re-energized, means that the quality of your output on the other side, having had lots of fun in being refueled and refreshed, is going to be significantly more. So it really is important. And in those times, and I said I'd talk a little bit about technology, in those times, try, if you can, to unplug. Almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, and that includes you, according to Anne Lamott. The average person, did you know, checks their phone, so checks their smartphone for emails and social timelines 96 times a day on average. And if you think that's not a lot, You're clearly overdoing it. And if you think, well, that's quite a lot, I'm sure I don't do that. Maybe just see, actually. If you've got an iPhone, it will tell you whether you're up or down this week in terms of your screen time. Pay attention to that little brief you get on a Monday morning where it tells you what you were like last week. It's important. Digital detox, away from your technology. So that is your screen, that is other screens. You can't use the excuse of, oh, well, I won't be on my computer, but I'll be on that other screen. I'll watch some TV. That includes it too. So getting away from your tablet, getting away from your smartphone, even taking off your smartwatch, for example, just properly disconnecting is key for a work-life balance. We, including me, don't do this enough. Genuinely, we don't. I am an absolute tech freak. I have so much tech in and around me here. I do have, thanks to my wife, some crystals here which allegedly balance some of the energies in and around the studio office space that I'm in. There's lots of things you can do to kind of mitigate some of this stuff, but the most important thing is to get away from it. So digital detox weekends, if you can do that. Turning off notifications. So even if you have to have your smartphone with you, switch the notifications off, because there's always that call when you're having your downtime, when you're having that quality space. There's always that calling. I was like, oh, I'll just check that. That could be important. Let me just look. Oh, there's something come through on WhatsApp. That's an important group. I need to see what they're saying. And then you're caught. You're back into it. So wherever you can, turn those notifications off. And another nice thing that you might do, and for lots of us, we're spending significant times hybrid working or working from home. Another key thing you can do is have designated tech-free zones. They could be areas of your garden, or if you've got a patio or a balcony or a decking, you could have tech-free zones where you just do not allow tech. Meal times, for example, another opportunity to have a tech-free space. Don't put your smartphone down on the table as you're eating. Leave it in the other room. It's incredible, actually, how empowering that can be. It feels awkward to start with, but it can be really good and really interesting. And this is somebody who is totally tech-enabled telling you this. So it's interesting to play with it. You might have withdrawal symptoms. Sometimes I get those too from this. But do experiment with it. You'll find a natural balance. So tech-free zones often should be and can be our bedrooms. A lot of people take tech, particularly in the evenings, when they say, oh, I've got a great work-life balance. I know exactly where I'm working, and when I have the split time then, and then I'm sort of doing all my leisure stuff. Yeah, I do check my emails when I'm lying in bed just before I go to sleep. So I have my laptop and I've got my phone next to the bed and this, that, and the other, but I'm sure that's okay. And of course, what they're doing is they're undoing all the great work that they've done earlier in the day. So make sure bedroom is a designated tech-free zone at the very, very least. And if you need to buy yourself a little manual alarm clock because you're thinking, well, Neil, I need the alarm on my phone, you can do that too, because you can get rid of that out of that space. And find something that works for you. Here, I'm just giving literally ideas. I'm not telling you exactly how to do it, but just introducing some ideas of ways that you will find you can empower and take accountability for this work-life balance. It's great fun to play with, and then just really go inwards and sort of sense how you're feeling differently, because I will almost guarantee you will feel differently from a lot of these things. A lot of these things will really foster, an incremental, little bite-sized chunks, incremental gains that we're talking about. So here are some tips, some top tips for you to foster and begin this journey of a better work-life balance. First thing is to create a priority list. So beginning each day with a to-do list, categorize the tasks based on their urgency and their importance. And this will streamline your work process and reduce feelings of being overwhelmed. And hopefully then you will never need to use that word busy again. Set clear work boundaries. Establishing a definite start and end time for your workday, particularly if you work from home or hybrid, will help you to prevent burnout and will maintain a clear distinction between your professional and personal life. And of course, then if we can also embrace regular breaks, you can interject little pieces of your personal time or little private time into the work day. It's not a negative. Tell your line manager it's a positive, because as you've seen from the research, you'll come back kicking in a really positive way after. And implement techniques if you're going to add regular breaks into your workday. The Pomodoro Technique, where you have 25 minutes of focused work followed by a 5-minute break, can really enhance your productivity and reduce your mental fatigue. Try it. If 25 plus 5 isn't the balance for you, some people do 15 plus 5. Some people do an hour plus 10. So you've got to kind of figure out, based on your role and the kind of tasks that you're doing, what works for you. But experiment and play with that. Pomodoro Technique is really, really a strong and very, very positive habit to get into. And it just has that mental reminder. And there are apps you can get that will basically act as a little timer there, and pay attention to them and work with them. Don't think, oh, well, just this hour, I won't use it, because then you've broken the habit. So see if you can really establish some strong habits for that. Dedicate a workspace. Work-life balance is all about knowing when you're working and when you're not. So if you're working from home, particularly, set aside a specific area that is solely for work, and that will help you to mentally, subconsciously differentiate work mode from home mode. So when you're having your breaks, make sure you go to home mode space rather than stay in work mode space, even if you're tempted to check the sports headlines or check your social timeline. Regularly unplug. So designate specific times, and particularly in the evenings, when you'll disconnect from work-related communications, to nurture, that's a key word, nurturing your personal space and maintain mental peace. And you may have a kind of role where you do need to check what's coming tomorrow sometime during the evening because of, the nature of your work or the destination you need to head to. That's okay. What we're not saying is, these are strict rules, but they are a good thing to be very mindful of. When you do these things, you're doing them consciously, because then that will maintain your mental peace. Focusing on physical health. I started off by saying this is a really key one for setting your body that's going to support your mental state and your emotions. So incorporating short little exercises, stretching routines and the like into the daily routine will help you to foster much better physical health. And of course, then it really does reduce the repercussions, which can be significant, of a sedentary lifestyle. And that really isn't necessarily a great way of, fueling yourself on a long-term basis. So really pay attention to physical health in whatever stepping stones you need to get to where you want to. That is really key. We talked about mindful eating, so steer clear of desk lunches, as we talked about, and dedicate time to enjoy your meal, and the hydration, of course, fostering better digestion, so it helps your body to do what it needs to do, but it also then provides at the same time another much needed break. And that, of course, then equates as well to your digital detox. So scheduling specific periods to stay away from your devices. Again, book this in your diary. If you're a planful person, get this booked in, because unless you do, you're not going to do it. So this will aid in reducing mental clutter and will promote a focused mindset. So when you come back, you'll feel differently. You will feel more aligned, more in tune with the tasks and the actions ahead. And of course, we also talked about open communication. So don't hesitate to communicate your needs and boundaries to your team or your manager. And this will really foster an understanding and potentially lead to workload adjustments if they're needed. It is a much, much better place now than it was, say, 10, 15 years ago, to be able to be honestly vulnerable, honestly open up about how you are feeling. So no matter what gender you are, there were some gender sort of issues with certain genders not being able to open up in such a way, or at least it was frowned upon back in the day, whereas now everybody is encouraged openly and proactively to share how they are feeling. So make the most of that, really, really make the most of that. And if you feel the need to be vulnerable, be vulnerable. You'll find that it will be rewarded and it will be respected. People do appreciate vulnerability. It takes a brave person to be vulnerable, but if you can, you'll find the spin-off benefit to you will be significant. And as part of that, it is, of course, then dedicating time for yourself. So ensure that you set aside personal time for your hobbies or for relaxation, anything that will serve as a stress reliever and will help you to nurture your personal growth. So part of work-life balance isn't just about growing at work, but it's also you growing personally. So if part of your personal downtime is, I'm going to do a course, I'm going to actually develop this particular skill or this particular behavior by doing an online course or going to a club or learning something new, then that for you could be dedicated positive downtime. So it comes in all shapes and guises. So find things that are very specific to you. And then just pulling all of these tips together really can significantly enhance the balance that you're looking to get. And of course, then it gives you, just by its nature, by default, a much happier and healthier lifestyle. But it is advisable. I've downloaded loads of stuff to you here, but it is advisable, of course, to start with maybe just one or two of these strategies and then gradually add more as you adapt to them. So you can craft over time a balanced life tailored to your very specific personal needs and situation. So incremental gains. Don't beat yourself up if you don't think, oh, I can't do all 10 things tomorrow. I can't do that. It's too much to think about, too much to do. Take your time. Be gentle with yourself. Be kind to yourself as you go through this exercise and enjoy it. This is the key thing. Finding a work-life balance as you get step by step by step towards it is only a good thing. And the closer you get to the balance that you're looking for allows you to feel better and better every day. So the essence of a fulfilling life, be it work, leisure, play, relationships, is balance. Your work-life balance will affect every aspect of your well-being. We've looked at the various elements of it, your emotional, physical, mental well-being. So if you start to take these actionable steps, you will find yourself very, very quickly leading a happier, healthier, more mindful, more aware, more self-aware and balanced life. But do remember, this is for life. It really is, because balance isn't something you actually achieve someday. It's something you create every day.